Welcome back onto my channel. I hope you're doing well. So if you're new here, my name is Precious Hannah, and I normally say stick around, join me, just with me, get to know me, and then subscribe, because I know you're going to stay anyway. I have two amazing guests with me today. Your name, say your socials, let them know who you are.
Sure. So I'm Joe Hatagwa. I'm a Sierra Leonean American living here in Accra, Ghana, and my channel is called Authentic African.
I'm Yaba, and my channel is called Ghana Bound.
There you go. So guys, check them out. Thank you guys for joining me today. So this is very spontaneous. We have just done a video on Yaba's channel that I'm gonna link up here. We spoke about dating, and guys, I'm sure you know I love talking about dating and all of that good stuff. So we're gonna get right into it. So first of all, quick gist. So Yaba's married 9 years.
Yeah.
To her friend, her business partner, and
And life partner.
so romantic. I just started dating, and you...
Yeah, I'm dating.
Okay,
I'm dating.
yeah,
I would say dating.
dating. Full stop. We'll keep it like that.
Keep it there.
Okay, so you were just telling us a story
Sure.
about dating a young woman who was that word that I'm learning.
Polyamorous.
Polyamorous. Can
Yes.
you let the people know what that means? Oh wait, but this wasn't in Ghana though.
This wasn't in Ghana.
Wasn't in Ghana.
No.
But go ahead.
But it just helps with my communication because the relationship was such an open relationship. It required a lot of communication and honesty, and you learn a lot about yourself. So she was polyamorous. When I met her, she had already been living a polyamorous lifestyle for 3 years. She had two partners, but they were long distance, which is usually how I meet most people in that world. They mostly had long distance relationships, which is how they did it. She was not as jealous as most people. She did get jealous, don't get me wrong, and there were specific places where she would get jealous, and I had to learn about that. But in general, for the most part, that wasn't a big thing for her. She just wanted to make sure I was happy, and that might mean with her and with others. But that was basically it. Polyamory means many loves. So she had other people that she was dating. I had other people that I was dating. What I would say, though, was we were very, 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 very clear and specific about who we brought into our situation, right? So it wasn't like how I dated in my 20s, where I would have loved to have met her because it would have been exciting times. But, I was way more serious about vetting, right? So it wasn't just having fun with like multiple women, right? Because there were a lot of things that you have to take into consideration. One, when you are dating someone seriously, you have to take their health into consideration. You don't want to put them at risk.
Yeah.
So that means that you need to be testing yourself as often as possible. And that was something that I did a whole lot more than I had done previously. With her, we tested, once every 3 months or sometimes more, depending on when I was going to see her. We talked about every person that I encountered and what the relationship was with that person. And she would give me advice. Like I always had my sisters, and I had friends that were female or women friends who would give me advice on dating. But it's different when someone who really is into you is telling you about yourself. I learned a lot about how bad I was at dating, seriously.
Wow.
Because she could give me a lot of advice. Because I spent my entire 20s not dating anyone seriously because I didn't want to cheat. Like, that was my whole thing. So I was like, I won't cheat if I'm not in a serious relationship. And so I just had a lot of fun. And so I never really learned the skills required to be in a one-on-one relationship with someone for an extended period of time, right? There were so many things I didn't think about, like, did you eat? Are you hungry? Those are not questions that would occur to me, right? And that's something that's really important. That shows that you're affectionate and that you care about someone, right? And so these are just little things that I didn't even think about, I didn't know. And she was able to train me on those kinds of things. Or I would tell her about a date and how it went. And she was like, sometimes she'd be like, I don't even know why I like you. She was like, how do you not know this? But it was just, there was a lot that I had to learn. And at a much later age than
I want to go back to this.
Yeah.
I've noticed that dating guys, there's like a lot of broken men out there. And there's a lot of broken women. And then it might be because, children are having children and these conversations are not being had. But why do you think you were bad at dating? Like, what was it? Like, what would have, as a young person in your 20s, what would have made you better?
Yeah, I think just practice makes perfect, right? And I just never practiced it.
But then would you say, like, I don't know the background you came from, but if you saw, like, your mum and dad in this idea of in a relationship, and they were married, but in their marriage they were still dating.
Yeah.
Would that have maybe opened your eyes a little bit more?
Absolutely, yeah, because you learn from other people, right?
Yeah.
You model yourself after other people, right? Anyone who has kids knows that they mimic you, they do everything you do. It's just how it works, right? And so, had I seen that, it probably would have helped. Like, the people from other races that I grew up around, or I met even in my career, I noticed that they had come from dual family households where there was a loving relationship, and they saw how that worked. My parents were separated and together, but also they didn't really like each other. They just loved each other. So I never really saw maybe a healthy relationship. So I couldn't learn from them, and then I didn't have the practice myself as an adult either. And so although I try to be an empathetic person and I try to think about others, there are just basic things that go with being in a relationship. Like, it just takes time. Like, you can't hear something one time and automatically pick it up, right?
Right.
So even though I had seen it with him, you just need more context. Sometimes you need someone who's across from you to say, like, hey, this is not how it goes, or this is why it's not working there. And for her, that was a really beneficial experience for me, because I could tell her about the date or the experience dating, and she could say to me, well, here's where you went wrong, here's something you should do. Or she could say, no, I agree with you on this, or this is just another way to look at it. So it helped me a lot, because I think that I was blind to certain things, right? I had blind spots.
I think we all do.
We
all do, until someone who's in it with you can tell you. But the unusual aspect of this is that the person in it with you is telling you for somebody else that you're with.
Yeah.
So this is the bit I would never have experienced.
Okay, so I saw a post that Denta made about someone from the US wanting to come to Ghana, but it being too religious. Now here's the thing where Ghana is religious. Like, let's not hide it. We're a bit religious.
Let's define religious, because this is a big thing when it comes to it. Because when I was raised outside of Ghana, and I've always known Ghana's, very conservative. We cover our knees. We definitely no sex before marriage. You're lucky if you hold hands before marriage. And then I moved to Ghana, and the reality shone upon me.
Sure.
That people are openly, not openly. They are still sleeping around. They're having multiple partners.
Right.
There are many skirts above the knees. I'm just saying that as a jokey example, but it's exactly what I thought Ghana was like. So religious in terms of going to church every Sunday, I would say absolutely. Religious in terms of I could start praise and worship in ShopRite and everyone would join me because it's already playing in the background.
Right.
Absolutely. And there's a belief of a greater being. Absolutely. But in terms of, how would you describe it?
I agree with everything you just said. I think the biggest thing that I learned here is that people were outwardly Christian, right? So meaning going to church, like nothing's open before 1 p.m. on Sunday, right? Everyone's at church, right? And that's a thing that's here that's different from Sierra Leone. Things are open all day long, but we're also mostly majority Muslim country.
Yeah.
So it's different. But yeah, so that's one thing. But I would say behind closed doors, it's a very different thing, right? So I will say that I have discovered that just as fast as people can be to wanting to get married, they can be as fast wanting to be sexually active.
Yeah,
I would say. And so it happens with speed. So I was surprised about that because I was coming here expecting, like what you said, that it's very, very religious.
Well, you were expecting to come and find like church girls that would be like, no, please, I'm waiting to like get married.
Exactly.
Please.
But you know what they say about the preacher's kids, right? So
yeah, of course, PKs, yeah.
So I guess I should have maybe expected it, and also Sierra Leone is a little different, but I thought Ghana is going to be very different. And in my experience, and maybe it's just who I attract, can't speak for all Ghanaian women, but my experience has been, it's happened in some cases faster than I anticipated. I wasn't getting that vibe right away. I thought, it would be a few dates or something, and we're both adults, so it may happen, and it happens a lot sooner than I expected.
So one thing I could say about Ghana, religion and dating in Ghana and people, is that it has taught me is like, people are people. Don't put, how do I say, like, I'm not going to put my faith in people. I hope this makes sense. If you did, you would absolutely lose your faith in the whole idea of being a Christian. If you're like meeting people and you're like, wait, people, this is how people act, like what is going on here? It would make you just want to run in the opposite direction. So it made me just aware of how people are, because I met guys in church that would be like, oh, I like you, I mean, we can sleep together, no one has to know, like nobody has to know, you know, kind of vibes. Like I got that, and I was very shocked, and I was like, but what vibe? It was like, what vibe am I giving you that makes you think that I want this? Like, what's going on here?
But I think that's the thing, though. A lot of people who don't look like they give that vibe outwardly are those kinds of people.
Oh yeah, okay, that's true.
You know, so like that's
it's
why I
always
was
the guys
surprised.
that you're always shocked about, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's true. So for me, I would say that like being in Ghana, I would say my spiritual life has like definitely, I have gotten closer to God and, you know, things like that. But I don't put my trust and my faith in people. Like I just don't, like I don't put it past anyone, because we know, I mean, we are coming from a place where like there are men of God like sleeping with women, all in the name of God knows what. Well, all in the name of God, basically, just to get their way. And you know, I'm not going to put my faith in that person, and I'm not going to make it discourage me from believing in the good that God has for me. Now, this is what I was going to throw the question to you about sex before marriage.
Yeah.
But please feel free to say no comment.
No problem.
But what did you do? What's your stand on it? You have children. In this day and age, what are you going to tell your children now?
Yeah,
because, you know, are you going to tell them, wait till you get married? I mean, forget... Sorry, mom and dad, but forget being a Christian right now. Let's be realistic.
Yeah.
Let's be totally realistic. Are we going to tell young people wait before marriage, or are we going to be honest with them and tell them like what sex is and this is what can happen?
Yeah.
You know, what's your take on it?
So I waited till I was married. I had the fear of my parents. I want to say the fear of God in me, but I had the fear of my parents. And then as my faith grew, I had the fear of God in me. But I waited till I was married, and I found it that the older I got, the easier it got, because then you don't put yourself in certain situations. I was very clear with men when I met them. This was my stand, so it wasn't ever like confusing, you know. What would I say about telling? I've got a daughter. I've got a son and a daughter. Don't know what I'm going to tell my son, because I don't know about boys, but my husband can deal with that. But what I would say to my children is that they have to be very wise about who they open themselves up to, because whoever we expose ourselves to emotionally, spiritually, physically especially, it's going to have a lasting impact. So I want to educate them on that. So as they get older, I mean, when they're young, I'm going to tell them what my parents told me: do not bring any boy into your room. I'm going to set certain things into position, like no sleeping over with your boyfriend, girlfriend, to protect them when they're younger. When they're older and they have to make their own decisions, hopefully we can educate them to protect themselves physically and emotionally. It's going to be interesting, but it's certainly helped me. So when I entered my marriage as a virgin, I didn't have other ties. So for me, on my part, it was simple, because I was just there to look forward, and I only had one partner, so I was able to focus just on that and not look at anything in the past. So I would recommend it to anybody and everybody to wait, but that's just a recommendation, you know. I was able to focus on myself. I had less distractions, so I was very focused as a woman.
I have to commend you for that first.
Thank you.
I mean, I know one person. I went to college with 3 very, very religious people. They would consider themselves religious. One of them has made it all the way to this point. She's 30-something. I don't want to give anybody ideas of who she is. But yeah, she's the only one, and people don't believe her. Right, but like I know how difficult it's been for her, because I've known her really well. Congratulations!
Thank you. It wasn't easy, because I grew up in a very I was out of London, so I was away from Africans. I was away from that culture, so it wasn't even like I was raised in that. So all my friends.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I feel like that even helped you.
Maybe, but the friends around me, by the time we were all 15, school 15, 16, then you start talking about it, people are doing it. But I had already decided then, and then I think there was a boy in school, and he said to me, us boys respect you for waiting, and that sparked like a motivation in me. Like a 15-year-old telling me that, I was like, yes, I can do this, you know. So it sparked it.
Wow. Okay. So for me, Yeah, I'm a little bit on the opposite side of the spectrum because, you know, I'm a guy and it's a very different thing, you know, like as soon as you hit puberty, I want you guys to understand something because I don't think people really understand this. As soon as you hit puberty, it's about ejaculation, right? I'm just going to be honest.
Be honest.
It's your body is taught that once you are able to have children, you're supposed to have children. And so when you're a child and you're starting to go through that and you don't know, it's just that's the main goal. I mean, if any movie or TV show will tell you that, but if you talk to, it's probably hard for you guys to hear it because as women, you're not going to hear guys talk about that.
But it's good too.
When we were like 14, 15, 16, that's all we ever talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Before we did it, after we did it, and then all the conquest once we did it, right? I mean, when you're a teenager, that's what your world revolves around. Like the girls always wanted to be in the relationship with the guy, and the guy was always thinking about how many girls he could get, right? And it was always that clash at that age.
Yeah,
so you know,
even now.
Yeah. So I would say, you know, the idea of not having premarital sex was like I thought that was a joke, right? Like. There was just no way that was possible because of everything I knew, everyone I grew up with. It just was not going to happen. So, it's, in terms of that, I think most people see the world that way. And so with my nephews, for instance, I practice on my nephews as if they were my own sons.
Yeah.
And I had that conversation with my nephew, you know, because the context we had in relation to sex at the time that I was growing up, I'm 37 as I mentioned, so that's like the late 90s, early 2000s. Is very different from theirs, right? Like the way we were allowed to engage with women is very different from how we should be engaging with women today. And so I've had that conversation with him. The main conversation I've had with him though was the way you're protective of your mom. I've noticed he's very protective of his mom, right? So like when like if I'm like watching them and she's like bothering me, checking up on them, I'm like, oh, your mom is getting on my nerves. He's like, he'll always defend her.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the way you defend her is the way you need to approach your relationship with other women, right? You need to approach them in the same way that you want your mother to be treated. And so, like, consent is a very new thing now than it was when I was growing up. And it's very important that you are very clear that you have consent. You also want to make sure that, you know, I can see that girls like you a lot, right? So because you can doesn't mean you should, right? And I think that that's going to be a really important distinction that he's going to have to make.
Absolutely.
Because I didn't have that, right? So growing up, I didn't have a lot of girls who liked me. So as soon as it happened, I went nuts, right? For him, I think he has like a deluge of women. Like the girls like him. Older women always talk about how cute he is. So I'm like, just be very careful because there are going to be some women you're going to have a different goal than they are. Their goal, if they want to be with you, even if they do have sex with you, it's because a lot of times it's because they think that that's what you want, so you be with them, and you just want to have it, right? And I'm just like, you have to understand that they're coming at it from a different perspective. You need to approach it differently and be very careful about it. But that I wish that conversation had been had with me to some degree, because it wasn't, you know. So that's how I approach it with my nephews.
I feel like that's the problem, is that in our culture as well, I can't speak for everyone, but I know in the African culture, generally we don't talk about those things clearly like that. You just talked about it so practically. I think talking to a young girl and a young boy, explaining how we all think differently, and she might think, oh, I'll do it just so he likes me and stays with me. Whereas for him, he's like, I'll do it full stop, and he's not evil.
So here's a case where I am, I am a factor of that, where I lost my virginity only because I didn't want my first boyfriend to leave me, literally. And I now say that, I laugh at it, but here's the thing where girls are still experiencing it today. 10 years later, you do the maths. 10 years later, girls are still going through this process where I'm going to sleep with this guy because I don't want to lose him. Guys, let me give you a quick gist. After I lost my virginity to the person I thought was the love of my life, he cheated on me with like 4 different girls, 3 months later anyway. So it was like pointless. I'm still on the fence about, am I going to teach my children sex before marriage and after marriage? I don't know. I am going to look at the person's my child's character, or the people around me, like my nephews, my nieces. I prefer to look at your character and see what works for you. Because I feel like at the same time, I was a very shy girl in school, and I felt like this was something that made me feel like a woman. It made me feel, well, I say I was shy, but I was very also I was a mix of things, guys. But then I feel like it's something that made me feel like a woman. It made me feel wanted. It made me feel needed. It made me feel pretty, because in those days I was the ugly black girl, like in school. I wasn't the nice light skinned girl or the brown skinned girl. I was this dark just there, like no one paid attention. So many things go into it from a woman's point of view. Again, from a guy's point of view, it's I'm a young guy, like have a girlfriend, but then this girl likes me, that girl likes me, this girl likes me. So even with that being said, now guys, after 10 years, I'm coming to the realization, because of what you said, that it's, you know, he was young then, and we were going through different things. He just wanted to see how many girls I wanted to get married. Like, you know, there's different things.
I think the conversation needs to be had, like, whether you're religious or you're not religious, because and regardless, you're gonna feel pressure from somewhere to do it at some point. So my kids, I'm gonna explain to them how, like, that might come about later, because I'm realistic. They may still do it, but I'm not the sort of parent that will be like, oh my goodness, you know, God forbid. Bringing it back to Ghana, there's an issue here now with underage pregnancy, with teenage pregnancy.
Yeah, there is a big
issue, and you know, we started this conversation with Ghana being a religious country. It doesn't work simply saying you are religious. It's to stop these things happening. People are having sex at all ages, and it just needs to be talked about freely and openly.
Like, what do we need to be doing right now? Is it that we need to let young people know about contraception?
Yeah, I absolutely think that they should talk to children about contraception. So this is an issue, age? I think, as early as like 11. I think as you are starting to hit puberty, that's where those conversations need to happen, because those kids start to explore. And they have access to information that we did not have access to at that age. So for me, I learned about female anatomy through my mother. My mother was becoming a licensed practitioner nurse, an LPN. So I learned about female anatomy through her book, right? So I'm reading it. It's called The Bottoms Up View. Oh my God, this is amazing. But I learned a lot from it. And it would have been nice to have someone have that conversation with me, because when I went to school, I was the one with the most information, because I looked at that. I was 12. And but everyone had said they were already having sex, and this is how it goes, and things like that. And so you know, I felt like there was so much misinformation. We had a lot of those issues. We had a lot of teenage pregnancies in my school where I went to school, because we didn't have enough education or information coming from other people. So I think you need to explain it as early and as often as possible. I had the conversation with my nephews at 12 and 9 about how babies come to be. Right, and I was very clinical about it. I'm like, some people, you'll hear, like on TV shows, they always say, you know, when the kid asks the parents, it's like, when two people are in love, I'm like, wrong. They don't have to be in love to have kids. So I'm like, that's the first thing you need to know, is that you can have kids with somebody you don't like, because you may have decided to have unprotected sex, and you get them pregnant, and then you find out you don't like them later. So that can be a situation, and you're tied to that person. If you're a good person, which I know you guys are, you're going to be tied to that person for at least 18 years. And you are going to produce a human with that person. It's very important to understand that. And all it is the sperm that comes from you and the egg that lives in her. And when they come together, it builds a baby. And that's what happens after 9 months. You don't have to love the person. And it was like eye-opener for them.
You've just opened my eyes, because it's true. I've been like watching TV shows, and it's when two people love each other, come together. That is very toxic.
What you did there was education, and it's clinical, and they can relate to it straight away. TV creates a narrative, a false narrative, and Disney's the worst for it. Disney ruined my life. And it gives you this really false belief about what a man's responsibility is and a woman's responsibility is, and then what sex means. And you see that often in movies, like movies. It's like they kiss, and then they're rolling around, and then it's the end of the scene. No one knows what happens after that, but they're carrying on with their life after. There are no consequences. So I think just sitting down to educate them and tell them the narrative on TV is a lie, but it's entertainment, so don't worry, it's not evil, it's just a lie. But this is the truth. As young as I agree with you, start them young, because they're already talking about it in school. Children's cartoons and TV programs already have those things in them. So we're waiting way too late if we're waiting for a 16-year-old to tell them about sex.
I mean, and they're 16, they think they already know everything. Even if they've already had sex, they still think they know, right? Because that's the other thing. I think a lot of children are learning about sex through pornography. Right? Which is a fantasy.
A lot of adults today learn about sex through pornography.
And that's the worst way to learn, because it's made to fulfill a fantasy, and the person who's in it, like the person receiving that kind of crazy sex, probably doesn't have sex like that in her regular life. She's performing for the camera. There's been all kinds of studies, all kinds of people talking about that. This is a conversation I have with my nephew too. I'm like, I know you're going to find it. And when you do, that's not how it really goes.
Perfect.
You know?
So you prepare them beforehand.
Yeah.
Because they will find it. I think we're very naive to think they won't. And
Mm-hmm.
all our parents would have been naive to think we weren't going to find that.
But you know
so
what's and the funny thing is right now is like what would have been classified as porn like 20 years ago is what we see in music videos today.
Absolutely.
So, or like let's say 30, 40 years ago. But like right now it's normalized. It's so normal to see go on Instagram and see a woman like half naked with this idealistic body that is probably not realistic. Right. And if we're not having these conversations, even like body positivity, letting young girls know that are like 13, 14, that look, your waist does not have to do this. If your bum is not big, you are still beautiful. Like if you're not a certain skin tone, you are still beautiful. If your eyes are bright, like there's so much we have to teach, not just sex, but like body image and the way you think about yourself and all of that stuff. So
I think Ghana has opened up massively to social media, which has been very useful for Ghana as a nation. But talking about children and miseducation, where there's not the conversation happening in the household or in the church, where it's like, don't let a man touch you, don't let a woman touch you, it's evil. But then you're not telling them, what if I do? Or what the consequences? Or actually, let's start from a positive aspect. This is how we were actually created to create life. Yeah. And this is how it works. Not just, it's evil, stop it, don't do it.
Yeah,
it's not that's
not helping. That hasn't been helping.
Yeah, it doesn't help. I mean, I think you can't prevent it. You just have to educate. Because I had a very poor education when it came to like relationship with women, with sex, and all of that kind of stuff. We had some serious situations. I got a girl pregnant when I was 16. Sure. And so that happened, and it's a lifelong thing you think about, right? Because I could have a 22-year-old child, right? Adult child. And I wasn't given any real insight into how to live and what to do in that situation. You had a lot of people giving their own advice and opinions, and most of the people I was consulting were my age, who didn't know anything about life, right? I was afraid to tell my parents because it was like, my mom found out later, but like, I didn't know how to tell an African mother that this happened, right? And so, and especially because of the way that she would talk, the things you were just talking about. And then, for me, I wasn't somebody who was going to visibly show, So I talked to my sisters, and my sisters were like yelling at me. And at the end, they came around to like, well, how are we going to handle this? What are you going to do? But I had to make some very difficult decisions at 16 years old, right? And that's just not the kind of thing. So I didn't get into that level of detail with my nephews, but I explained to them that there are so many things. That's why I think it was easy for me to express to them that you don't have to love someone for pregnancies to happen, right? And that was a huge lesson for me. And he was 12. He was 4 years away from the age I was where it happened to me. And so...
And those 4 years come by quick.
They do. And you grow up fast,
Yeah, very quick.
Yeah, so I think it's very important to educate and also to be as transparent and as clinical as possible. So there's no mistakes made about it. It's like this is exactly what can happen, and so they may not act accordingly, but it's in the back of their mind. Hopefully, it makes them make different decisions based on having that information.
Before we go, I want to ask you, where did you learn love from? Who and where did you learn love from? How to love from?
I still don't think I know what it is. I think my parents split up when we were young. So I knew like that before I knew, love, like an actual example of love. I think what I think it was came from TV, and I'm now as an adult trying to undo it.
Can you think of any shows that like would make you think like...
Yeah, like Friends, all the Disney shows. I watched, a lot of like, young kids movies where it's just that whole love mess. I can't think of any exact
if you don't know me, I'm a huge Friends fan. So in Friends, like, who would you look at and say, like, okay, what relationship did
Ross
you see?
and Rachel.
Okay.
So you see that, you think, and this is how you resolve conflict. When you watch comedies now, and you look at how to resolve conflict, it's such a mess. Like, the woman may, like, disrespect him. She'll be like, oh, shut up, and then the whole crowd's laughing. If I did that to my husband and just said to him, shut up.
Because there's no crowd laughing.
There's no button that's going, there's no button saying, but when you look at it, I watch comedies now from a married perspective. I'm like, that is no way I can do that to my husband. I know everyone's different. They'd be like, oh, shut up, But I mean, it's actually like, shut up, or you're being stupid.
Right.
I can't even look at you right now and feel good saying that.
Right.
But in a comedy, the laughing comes on. So I learned that, and I think a lot of us did, watching TV programs on how relationships should look. And it doesn't. Even The Simpsons. I used to watch The Simpsons, and it's just like, religiously, and it's just like, that's a family right there.
Yeah.
That's how they interact. And my family were broken in the background, so I'd watch and look for examples.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it came from people around me later in life, right? Like in my 20s, seeing people in relationships. I mentioned my roommate, because I think he was a good example of that. He was like really good at trying to put her first, and like every relationship that he had, he was always putting his girlfriend first. So I got a chance to kind of see that, but it happened there because what I got from TV shows, I knew it was fantasy. I always saw it as fantasy, so I'm like, that's not real. And my role models were all artists. They were all rappers, and they were avoiding love.
Okay,
right?
so we've had this conversation in Yaba's video, so go watch that.
Yeah.
But can you mention three rappers? No, because it was 2 rappers and 1 very special person.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, so I was a big Jay-Z fan, right?
Jay-Z.
So I mean, I'm still a big Jay-Z fan. Go to me, but when I think through his lyrics, right? Because he was 32, he was about 30 years old when I was 16 or 17. And so I was really looking up to him. Like, this was somebody who was like 14 years or 15 years older than me, and he was expressing things about the world that I had yet to experience, but I felt like were coming.
Yeah.
And I even approached it that way. Like, he was like, there's a song, it's a bonus track on the Blueprint album. It's called Bitches and Sisters. And the idea is the difference between the two. And like, he would go through it, and I was like, oh, I was getting life lessons from his music. And at the time, he was actually dating Beyonce, and he had been dating her for I don't know how many years, but they weren't really public about it and didn't talk about it. And so that was the way I was approaching life. Diddy always had the hottest models and girlfriends, so I was looking at Diddy. And so most of my role models, Russell Simmons at the time, kind of some issues with him now, but he was the founder of Def Jam and one of the president for a long time, and he was always dating like models and stuff. And so for me, that's what I saw as like what a successful man is someone who has the hottest girls.
Yeah.
So that was what I was looking at, and that's what I was striving for. I wasn't looking to be in a relationship and be married to one person for the rest of my life. And so I think that had a really detrimental impact on me, honestly, on just how I looked at things, because I never wanted to look at a relationship seriously. It was always for the fun. And so that's the way it was. So it wasn't until I was much older where I realized that, I think you need a partner, regardless of how you do it. If you decide to get married, you don't, whatever. You do need a partner, because you need to have someone. 2 heads are better than one. You need to have someone to bounce ideas off of, and you're just not going to get to the places that you want to without an additional person there, I believe. And so it wasn't until later that I realized that, and then I started thinking about who are examples of those people now. And it ended up being Jay-Z later, again, seeing how he kind of came full circle on it.
Yeah.
I think his experience is a little different from mine, because he did end up with someone so much younger than him. But she's obviously very, very successful in her own right. And I'm sure he's learned a lot of life lessons from her over time, I'm sure. But they met when he was 19. She was 19 and he was like 30, whatever, 31.
I actually never realized that. Like, you completely,
there
is an age gap, but you completely forget, because she is so like mature in
She's
her.
larger than life too.
Yeah, like she was so, I would say, mature in her career.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't even know. I mean, when Destiny's Child was out, they were like 14, 15. So come on, like, yeah, she was really young, but very mature, so you wouldn't even notice. But yeah, it's true.
So it was those guys. It was like Jay, then it was like Barack, I think, was the biggest help for me. I don't think, I mean, regardless of your political affiliations or what you believe, Barack was hugely important for so many of us, because we always thought, first of all, you can never have a black president. And he always talked about how important Michelle was, at all of his speeches. And sometimes it's politics, right? True. She had a much higher approval rating to this day than he does, so it helps him to have her on stage. But the way he talked about her glowingly, and how he says that he wouldn't be where he was without her, I think was super important for me, because I didn't see that anywhere else. And he reached the pinnacle, maybe not financially, but in terms of, he was the leader of the free world, right? And he needed somebody like her for him to achieve that. And I think that to me was probably the biggest thing that led to me believing that that's going to be an important part of me achieving the goals that I want to achieve.
Yeah.
Can I add a bit to mine?
Yeah, please do.
Edit this on, Hannah, okay, to my bit. Pick it up and carry it back.
I'm keeping this in.
But really where I learned love from was from Sam, my husband now, because I was able to relearn that through experience with him, but to have someone be that selfless and like lift me up, and also now watching him as a father, how he loves our kids, that's where I learned love.
So guys, like I said, I can talk for the whole of Africa. So we're going to leave it there. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you watched this far, please subscribe. You can binge watch some more videos. Once again, this is my homegirl. Thank you. And this is my homie,
Joe.
Guys, thank you so much for watching. Follow us on Instagram. Everything will be linked below. And have a fantastic day. If you have any comments, leave them in the box below. Bye.